So this week's podcast, we meet Dave Geer, and he's talking about what it's like to be senior leadership in a major airline. And every now and then, we're very lucky to get somebody like Dave along and come and talk about, what does it actually mean to be at that very senior level? And he looks after pilots, cabin crew, and all sorts of stuff for Virgin Atlantic. So we talk about, the fear flying culture, what they're doing, the safety approach, and lots of other really great stuff. So look out for that and hope you enjoy it. So welcome to the Lovefly podcast. And this week we welcome Dave here from Virgin. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving your time. So Dave is in a senior position at Virgin Atlantic, and I'll tell you more about that in a sec. But as you know, when you're flying and you think this is my flight, and this is all you sort of focus on, but it's important to get the big picture of all these different professionals that are working tirelessly to look after the airline and keep you safe and all the rest of it. And so that's why we try, if we can, get somebody senior on every now and then. And Dave has kindly stepped into that. So thank you.
Not a problem at all.
So tell us about your grown-up job, Dave.
My grown-up job, yeah. I've been with Virgin for 13 years and done a variety of jobs, everything from working in the holiday business to I ran the pricing revenue management team for a while, and now look after operations or large parts of the operation. And the best way I guess I describe my job is I look after the flying parts of the operation as opposed to the stuff that happens on the ground. And I know you've spoken previously with all the people that work at the airports and load the plane with cargo and things like that. So, but my job is to work with the teams that do the flying. So our pilots and the team that look after our pilots and do all the tricky technical navigation, flight planning, all the tools our pilots use, the cabin crew and everything that goes along with the cabin crew, everything that gets put on our flight that isn't cargo. So food and beverages, blankets, pillows, toilet paper, soap, amenity kits, all those things. And then a team that sort of pulls it all together in the background to make sure that there are pilots and cabin crew on each flight. And if someone goes sick, that there's a pilot or cabin crew member to replace them.
Interesting. So it's quite a big remit by the sound of it.
Yeah, it's always something happening. Never.
Yeah, that is. It sounds like a keep you awake at night type job. So
yeah, there's occasionally that, especially when Heathrow shuts down for the day. That's a wake up early in the morning type job.
Yeah. Okay, so you look after a lot of the areas that people will be really interested in, and so I'm sort of curious about you, like how you ended up in aviation, what your to get to the route you're in now. It didn't sound obvious when you sort of started with the holidays stuff. I was thinking, crikey,
yeah. I think I get described as a squiggly career or something like that, not your traditional up through the ranks. I actually started as a chemical engineer and trained as a chemical engineer out of university. I guess that's my first taste of sort of being involved in an operation and safety getting drummed into you and things like that. And then I actually went off on a complete tangent for a while as what's called a management consultant, consulting in the city, if you like, for big businesses. And actually I was doing some of that when I first came to the UK 14 years ago. And I did a project for Virgin Holidays that they offered me a job at the end of, and that's how I ended up with Virgin. And as I kind of described, I did a number of, I guess, probably more commercial type jobs in the airline up until the pandemic, where I made the transition into the operation side of the business. And actually that was partly because coming out of the pandemic was a really tricky period for all airlines, and making sure that the commercial side of the business and what we were actually putting on sale and selling to our customers matched with what the operation could actually deliver, because we were having to train a lot of people, bring aircraft back into service, things like that. And I guess me understanding the commercial side of the business, coupled with my new role in the operation, meant that I had a bit of an appreciation of both sides of the fence, if you like, to try to bring the teams together. And because that was part of the reason I ended up looking after the operational side.
I was going to ask what was behind that, because that doesn't seem like well, certainly I'm going to take it right back to a chemical engineer. Like, none of these seem obvious, but what made you switch over to the operational side more?
I think getting that appreciation of different sides of the business has always interested me, all the way back to when I was doing my consulting roles. You'd always get thrown into different businesses to solve a new problem, and I've always sort of thrown myself into to just learn something new, solve a new problem, go after the next big challenge. And as I described, certainly ramping up an airline from really not flying much. There was points during the pandemic where we turned our airline into a cargo only operation, to suddenly the world opening up again, and people wanting to visit loved ones and go on those holidays that were put off for 2 years. Was a hell of a challenge and a hell of an exercise to go after.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it must have been like, and it seems like a million years ago now. It's very weird. I remember doing podcasts, talking to people about what's it like flying during COVID, and trying to encourage people to still go out there and do it. But it was a very different beast for a while, wasn't it?
A really different beast. And like lots of roles out there, our pilots and cabin crew did an amazing job flying out to China in sort of almost full hazmat gear, because they had to bring back PPE to the UK and things like that. So yeah, that they were absolutely doing a service for the community, if you like, and getting keeping the world moving during that time in what was quite a scary period for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was scary. Definitely, that is the right word for me. Yeah, you don't know where it was going to end, what it was all about. Didn't see it. I didn't see it coming. Not that anyone consulted me. Maybe you did, but
No.
Yeah, it was a shocker. But I'm glad to see that commercial aviation is recovering. It's still recovering. I think there's still a shortage of pilots. It seems to be. I don't know if that's linked to people taking early retirement at that point, but there seems to be. I get noise about this. I don't know if that's still a thing.
It is still a thing, and I think people did take early retirement during that time, and then also sort of courses got put on hold just because it was actually quite difficult to fly on that during that period. And actually, for most airlines and global aviation's now flying more than they did pre-pandemic, so we actually need more pilots. So yeah, that is an absolute theme, and I think will continue to be a theme for many years to come, because as you well know, training a pilot is not an overnight task.
No.
It's a task that takes years and years of lead up, particularly to fly long haul wide bodied aircraft that we fly.
Yes, and it's a long lead in. I was thinking that if I was a nervous flyer right now, I'd be listening thinking, oh, that means the existing pilots are stretched, and that's a problem. That's what they say.
Yeah, and I think this was always part of my role of ramping up the airline, is to absolutely make sure that there are enough pilots. That training program is really working well, and something that we've never cut back on or changed or fast tracked is the training our pilots need to do, and everything that they go through that has never changed and continues to get stronger and stronger to make sure that that safety element is foremost in everything we do.
Yeah. What about cabin crew? How are you doing on those sort of numbers? Was that equally affected or not?
It was, albeit the time it takes to train a cabin crew member, while that training course is extensive, and they go through a whole ton of material. Yeah, that takes months as opposed to years. So yeah, the lead time for that is a little different.
Yeah, so you've been able to recover a bit on that front. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about what your job entails then, talk us through a typical week, some of the things that you get involved in, so we can get a little bit of an insider's view to I've seen the people work in airlines.
Sure. I don't think there's ever such thing as a typical week. And I guess a lot of my role is actually what I describe aviation as the kind of ultimate team sport. And it's there's so many teams involved in flying and making sure our passengers get from where they're starting from to their destination safely. But it really is the ultimate team sport. So actually most of my job is just making sure the communication and the processes between teams is actually working really well. So yeah, I mean, lots of things. One thing I continue to be involved in is making sure that working closely with our commercial teams to make sure the schedule's put together, that operationally it's robust, that we can get our planes away on time to their destinations on time, that we've got enough resilience in the program. This aircraft occasionally do need extra. Well, they always had checks after every flight, but and that's for good reason. And then occasionally something's found that means that you can't use that aircraft, so you need another one on standby, ready to use. And then also some of the challenges that I've talked about, making sure that we have enough pilots, we have enough cabin crew, that they're always the people there to do their job. And then safety is a huge element of everything that happens at an airline. So I'm continually involved in sort of safety related meetings, and there's processes for that. And my team are pilots that have been pilots for 30 years and cabin crew members that have been cabin crew members for a long time. So while I don't bring the technical element to those safety related discussions, hopefully I'm someone that can sort of bring together and look at it slightly differently, ask a slightly different question. Have we thought about this? What's driving this trend? What's happening here? And 99% of the time, my team will say, "Hey, Dave, I've already looked at that. This is X, Y, and Z, and we've done this already." But that 1% of the time, we go, "Oh, okay, good question. We'll go away and have a look at that."
That's interesting. I'm feeling really nosy now, and so I always think when I'm doing these, like, what would the nervous flyer ask right now? When you say there's lots of safety meetings, is that kind of proactive, reactive? What sort of form do these things take? If you're allowed, I mean, I don't know what you're allowed to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have a really sort of regular cadence of safety meetings. I've one that looks at flight operations and what pilots do. There's another one for cabin crew. There's others for ground engineering, that then all come together on a bi-monthly basis into a company-wide one. So there's that really regular cadence where we do look at all the statistics, and we get lots and lots of reports, which is one of the great things about aviation is everyone's encouraged to report anything and absolutely everything, and you're really encouraged to do that, which is fantastic because that gives lots of really good information, data, and helps us understand, is there anything that we need to be looking at a little bit more closely. But then we also review any incidents that happen around the world as well, and say, okay, what can we learn from this? Is there anything at Virgin Atlantic that we need to do to make sure that incident never happens to us, or what can we practically do there? And actually, the great thing about that I found about aviation is everyone works together. And so often when we're looking at an incident that might have happened with another airline, that other airline might have fed back to us and said, actually, this is what we've learned. And it really is great that even though we compete very hard from a commercial pricing customer standpoint, when it comes to safety, actually everyone sort of comes together, and many other industries aren't like that, where safety is almost used as a competitive advantage. If you think about, I don't know, the car industry, for instance, they sometimes will say, we've got X, Y, and Z safety feature, that's why you should buy the car with us. Whereas you never see airlines talking that way. And that's because we genuinely all do share information with each other to try to make each other as safe as we can. Sorry, I've gone off. I'm in complete tangent.
No, I love that. That's a really relevant point, because I was going to ask you, because you're having these meetings, which sound great. And I was thinking, so that feels very internally referenced. And then you mentioned the fact that we look externally, and the sharing, which is what I was hoping you'd say. I was thinking, how can I ask this? Because, but you've led to it, and I think that's. I just want to sort of pause on that, for people to just think about that. Like, here you are, you're all competing, and yet you'll share stuff, and so you'll have a completely open forum when it comes to the safety side, and I find that mind blowing, and they're still very encouraging. I think people should take a lot of positivity from that, or reassurance, is probably a better word.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was something new to me as well, coming into aviation, to see that type of collaboration. And our the CIA, the Civil Aviation Authority, often sit on those meetings and encourage that collaboration as well. And yeah, it's just great for everyone to share what they're seeing. And it's things as simply as hey, have you noticed there's more wildlife and birds around this airport? Have you seen that as well? Is there anything that you think we should be doing with the airport authorities in order to help there? And just, little tidbits like that just makes us all stronger as a result.
Yeah, I think that's great. I've always wondered about. Obviously, I worked at Virgin years ago, as you know, but I haven't worked in any other airlines, and I was always curious that, you've got the culture, the just culture of it. Like, if something happens, you'll talk about it. You'll report it, you self-report, and you have that for pilots, for cabin crew, and the operational folks. I always thought, I wonder if it's the same in the office. Like, if you said, could you say to your boss, I've stuffed up, and could someone say to you, does that saying, like, lack of throwing, the blame thrower, does that exist everywhere in airlines, would you say? I don't know where I'm going with this question.
No, but I think to some extent, I think it does. And actually, maybe just touching on your kind of head office piece, what happened in the office. We have a 9:00 meeting every morning that starts the day looking at what happened the day before, and that way, is there anything from an operational standpoint that we should be doing now to correct anything that might have happened the day before, and also, most importantly, looking at the day ahead, and then we also look at sort of 7 days ahead.
Yeah.
But right at that meeting, we start with basically a safety moment to say, actually, and there's often about 100 people on that call. Does anyone have anything they want to raise before we go any further with this meeting in terms of safety? And you'll be pleased to know it's not people putting up their hand going, "Oh, I've seen a problem on this aircraft. We need to stop it." But it's more things like, "Hey, I read about this article on the weekend," or "I've seen this happen," or just bringing some perspective in from the outside, just to remind everyone, actually, first and foremost, of what we do is look after our customers and our people, and do that safely. And no matter what else we discuss during this meeting, safety is always where we start. So yeah, even though we sit in an office most of the time, the start is still absolutely safety.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really good. Because the other area that's occurred to me is that I often ask this as senior bods is this sort of challenge of being commercial and safe. So sometimes the media are not our best friends. Will say something about fuel challenges, or they'll say cutting corners here, and we know that's not the case. But I just wonder how you balance those two pressures. Like, you've got to make money, but it's so expensive to run airlines.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a fantastic question, and you may be surprised that I almost find this one of the easier parts of the job, and I'll tell you why. There's there of course is the meetings, as you put it, about looking after cost, and from a commercial point of view, we'll be wanting to fly our expensive assets, which are our aircraft. They cost hundreds of millions of pounds to buy, so you want to use them to generate revenue and things like that, and so you want to be flying them as often as you can, versus the operational areas that will want to be sort of making sure that we're not stretching too much, and that we are leaving on time, arriving on time. That operationally it's the system's very resilient, and of course there's always those tensions. But that's kind of one forum that we deal with that. But then when it comes to safety and anything that impacts safety, it is completely separate, and we never have a commercial or finance related conversation on a safety related issue. So therefore, it's almost, as I said, easy, because you take the action you need to take in order to make sure it's safe, irrespective of what it may cost, or what the commercial pressure is on that. And therefore, by keeping the two completely separate, actually, it means the safety element is a lot easier, and you just simply don't have those pressures.
Yeah, that's really reassuring to know. I mean, I know, like any sensible business, you'll be lucky, like, if you can save some money in different places without compromising safety. Of course, you're going to do that. But I think that's very reassuring to hear that separation. But now, I remember reading in some media nonsense a while ago, talking about one of sort of the low cost airlines, saying, they're telling the pilots to load less fuel and all this sort of stuff. And I just thought it'd be quite helpful from a senior point of view, like, just to completely destroy that nonsense that people might be holding on to still.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good example, because our pilots and the captain is the ultimate commander of the ship, and that person is in charge, and they're in charge of flying that aircraft safely. So final decision about fuel or anything else is up to the captain, irrespective of what anyone else wants to say or do, which I think is a kind of another layer of control and safety put in there. But yeah, I mean, fuel and things like that, fine. We give our pilots tools to limit the amount of fuel they use, by giving them information and things like that, but never at the sake of safety or compromise on that. And actually, with something like that, it's really not in the business interests either, because diverting to another airfield and not making it all the way because you don't have enough fuel would cost you a lot more money than actually getting to your destination. So it's really not in the interest of any airline to shortchange on fuel.
Yeah, and that's great. Thank you for confirming that. I wondered, just with your, because you've got the two hats, this is unusual, you see, to have the sort of commercial and the operational together. But to give people a sort of a sense of, like, because they used to bandy figures around saying, oh, every minute delay at the airport costs this much and all. I don't know if those things still exist or that's even true. But like, just to give people a sense of like what things cost and why it matters so much that that you spend the money on these things, like for example, I was going to say, the duty-free carts or the trolleys, how much each of one of those are. People are often gobsmacked because they think, wow, how could it cost so much? But because of so much thought that goes into all these sort of things. So I guess the long rambling question is leading to, what stuff cost? Like a delay.
What you
Give us an example. Give us some scary figures for people to think about.
what yeah, I mean, what you quickly realize is that everything costs a lot of money very quickly in aviation is what I've quickly learned. I mean, while I won't give you the exact figure, but something like when we had to shut down the operation, and because we fly almost all our aircraft, not quite, we do have operations out of Manchester, but the vast majority is out of Heathrow. So when we had that unfortunate incident earlier this year when Heathrow shut down for the day, that cost millions and millions and millions of pounds for us. And a lot of that, to go to your about why it does, is actually looking after our customers and making sure they've got hotel rooms and transport to hotels and things like that. So if we run an operation that's continually late, and then we have customers missing their connections and things like that, the costs quickly build up to look after our customers, and so we should as well. And then you've got the other compensation that we have to give as well if flights are more than 3 hours, 4 hours late as well. So those costs in terms of compensation, looking after our customers, quickly add up. And then I guess that the kind of hidden cost is, as I kind of talked about, putting together a schedule can be quite complex, and generally a plane just won't fly from one place to another. It will come back, if it's, as an example, fly from Heathrow to New York and then back to Heathrow. It won't do another another New York, because that will, to go to Heathrow to New York and back again, probably takes, including the time on the ground in New York, might take 13 or 14 hours type thing. So you've still got another 10 hours left in the day. So it's no good at just sitting on the ground at Heathrow. So we'll then go to, I don't know, Lagos or somewhere like that. So if things start to go off track, then it quickly spirals throughout the system, and before you know it, you're running into things like airports being closed, and lots of complications happen as soon as things start to spiral out of control, and then costs do very quickly build up.
You often see those sort of creeper delays, don't you? That then you see everything's like it takes forever. It seems like for it all to catch up again. It's like I think one of the things that people that quite like to think about is the sort of like, during this time that their flight is going to be looked after, they're going to be flying, everything's going to happen. Sometimes it wasn't applied to you so much because of the turnaround times are different, but a lot of people find it reassuring to hear about all the different checks that have to be done and how often they're done. I just wondered if you kind of have those sort of things in your head. I'm not expecting you to, because you're across a lot of stuff, but just to sort of remind people of how costly it is to keep one of these amazing aircraft in the air.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. So after every flight, you'll have engineers crawling all over the aircraft, doing a series of checks after every flight, and then you've got eyes on these aircraft from lots of different people, including one of the pilots will always do a walk around the aircraft themselves, just to as another check, just to have a look and see if they can spot anything. And so there's that after every flight, and then and then you've got regular maintenance that has to be scheduled in after a certain number of flights. An aircraft will always go into the hangar, and there'll be a whole catalogue of checks that need to be done depending on, and there's different types of checks for different type periods that they look at for a whole host of components. So it's these aircraft are they've got eyes on every nut and bolt absolutely all the time. Special cameras going everywhere. It's fascinating to go into the hangar and see what they do with their, those little. I'm sure there's a technical name for the cameras that I don't know, but they've got sort of really long necks with cameras and lights that the engineers can see absolutely every nook and cranny of these things. It really is quite amazing to see.
That's really, yeah. I mean, that kind of makes sense because they're fantastic things. But when you look at an engine, you think, crikey, how do you still see? So what if you fancied, like, thinking, well, we need to save a bit of money, could we put off these different checks? Like, in your car, you can just avoid, think, well, I'll postpone the service for a couple of months. I'm a bit skint. Can you do that in an airline?
Yeah. The very simple answer is you've got absolutely no chance. So all these things, if you don't do it, it's as simple as the aircraft sits on the ground until you do it. There's no it's pretty black and white from that perspective. You can't just hope that no one notices that you haven't had your MOT and you just keep on going. It absolutely doesn't work that way.
No, well, I know that, but I just wondered, I think it's people find it reassuring because it's very hard for people to understand how much, unless you sort of get all over the different parts of the business, and it's not something you would see or you'd necessarily think about, and people compare. So when you think about what an aircraft costs to start with, like hundreds of millions, like you said, it's just mad money. How do you make any money, Dave?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think you might have even quoted once the Richard Branson, our founder, comment about how to become a millionaire is start by being a billionaire and then start an airline. So,
yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
yeah. The margins are very thin. Yeah, it is.
So, but from a personal point of view, then what do you go on to do from here? Because you've had, like you said, you've had quite a squiggly career. I'm just being nosy, really, just thinking where does the next step take you with this experience you're getting now, or is this a massive enough job on its own?
Yeah, I definitely have days that I feel like it's a massive enough job on its own, and there's always Virgin is Atlantic has been very good to me and given me lots of opportunities, and there is so who knows what the next opportunity looks like. But I think I've been fortunate enough to sort of put the jigsaw together with different elements of the business, and there's still plenty more roles for me to do. But yeah, I certainly enjoy this one, and I get the benefit of working and seeing so many different people. I was actually at the gatehouse this morning where all our crews sort of check in, do their flight briefings, all of that before they go out and fly. And it's such a buzz just to be in there and see what they do. And actually, something to mention that always amazes me, and I can't think of any other job in the world like this, where you're continually being tested. And I was to go into a crew briefing and listen to a crew briefing. Until I'd been in one, I could never imagine it was like this. And of course, they're smiling and they have fun, and our crew really have that bubbly personality. But they sit there, and the flight service manager, so it's kind of the boss of the cabin crew on that flight, will quiz each of the cabin crew members and ask them a safety related question, and you've got to get that question right. And so you've got to be on your game every single flight and know what you're doing. And and they've got no idea what that person's going to ask them. And so they're sitting around the room and just watching them one after the other get the question right is just, I mean,
Yeah.
it's absolutely fantastic. And then on the other side, with the pilots, I've been lucky enough to be in some of their sim sessions, and just going in there and knowing that the instructor will often say to me, "Hey, Dave, I'm gonna give them this today," and these two pilots in their sim have no idea what event is going to be thrown at them in that simulator session, where they're just preparing a normal flight, and the instructor will say, "Right, fine, you're going from Heathrow to JFK today, off you go." And so they go off on their simulator as normal, not knowing what mad scenario they're going to be tested on, and suddenly, before they know it, they've, I don't know, lost an engine because they hit a bunch of birds and the wind's doing this and all of that. And just watching those pilots just deal with a situation without breaking a sweat, and just going through the process so calmly, even though they've just been thrown this crazy situation that they haven't experienced before, certainly not in real life, but this is why they're doing the training, and just watching them meticulously go through the process to get this plane back on the ground is, I mean, it's extraordinary. And once again, how many other jobs that I certainly don't, where every 6 months someone comes and tests you and says, "Here's a scenario, deal with it." I mean, you might get that for your job interview at the start, and that's only a really tough job interview, right? That someone throws a crazy scenario like that at you, let alone doing it to you every 6 months or before every flight. I mean, it really is amazing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm same. I've been lucky enough to go in and see some of that, and it is very reassuring. And also with the seeing the cabin crew when they go through their yearly drills, that they literally walk into an aircraft rig and there's someone on the floor and they've got to deal with it, and all that sort of stuff they're getting tested on all the time. It's very reassuring when you see all that.
Yeah, it's, I guess I'm in a very fortunate position to get to see all these things that that no one else gets to see when it sort of happens in the background. But yeah, in terms of reassurance, it's probably the most reassuring thing I could ever see is watching two pilots just calmly deal with a situation. And as I said, they don't even break a sweat. They just go through the process. They're trained so well in dealing with just about anything. They know and train from a human's factors perspective to not panic, to just deal with the situation in front of them and what they can control. And equally, as you said, with cabin crew, with their training in the rigs. And most weeks I walk through the rigs in our training hall, and yeah, they're working hard. You can hear them shouting, "Evacuate, evacuate, evacuate!" And if they're not shouting loud enough or not doing it exactly right, the instructor will pick them up straight away and do it again. And yeah, they've got to work hard.
Yeah, and the facilities are impressive. We use them for our we do an in-person course a couple of times a year there, and we use the facilities. And when people walk around, they're always gobsmacked at sort of how much kit there is there, and it's all the way it's all laid out, and all the doors, and it's amazing, isn't it? It's just an amazing setup, and not cheap.
No, and they have to practice all those elements that they will hopefully never need to open a door in an emergency, and never need to go down an emergency slide, and need to do half of the stuff they get trained on. But regardless, they have to go back every year and do the training and make sure that they're ready if anything did happen.
Yeah, amazing. So this has been super helpful. I don't think people could hear it enough, that this sort of like when the senior leader says the sort of stuff that you're saying, it's super helpful, because there's a lot of all the people will see is the operation. They don't see all the people behind making it happen, like people like yourself and the teams that you look after. So thank you for that. I wonder if I could just press you for sort of like one sort of closing statement, if you like, to say, if somebody who's listening to this, scared of flying, not just about Virgin specific, but commercial aviation, from your point of view, what would you say to them to reassure them?
Yeah, I think we've touched on a lot of it today, but the safety element is just something that is so ingrained into the organization. But as you said, this isn't just about Virgin. This is a true ecosystem of aviation where everyone does talk to each other, and the training and the checks and the more checks and the more checks and the number of times we get audited in a year to make sure that our checks on the checks on the checks are good enough is just absolutely phenomenal. And these people are on the top of their game, and I'm fortunate enough to get to see it almost on a daily basis, that the people that work in the industry really are superb, and they train really hard, and when you see them, the results of that, whether that's in the simulator or in their crew briefings or what they're doing in the hangar looking after the aircraft, it really is amazing. So I think that's what I'd say to everyone, that you've got real professionals looking after you, and even then we check them, they get checked again, and then the authorities check us. So you can take a lot of confidence in that.
Oh, that's amazing. Dave, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very, very much for that. And lots of very positive, reassuring messages there from airline leadership point of view. And I'm truly grateful to you. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Pleasure.